Put your seatbelts on and get ready for the ride. We're the freaking New York Jets, so we're built for this shit.
Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Friday, August 1st. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far today. This is episode 587 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. For those tuning in on YouTube, make sure to please like and subscribe. Of course, appreciate all of those tuning in on all the different audio podcast platforms. And today we have another set of New York Jets player previews. You know the drill. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here on the podcast throughout training camp, we take a look at two players, one on the offensive side of the football and the other on the defensive side of the football. And today we're going to take a look at running back Azareye'h Davis on the offensive side of the football as he enters his second season with the New York Jets, and rookie cornerback Azareye'h Thomas on the defensive side of the football a little bit later on in today's episode. But we will begin today, as we always do, on the offensive side of the football with Azareye'h Davis as he enters his second season with the Jets and his second season, of course, in the NFL. At 23 years old, he, of course, was a fifth-round pick in last year's draft, 173rd overall out of South Dakota State, standing at 6'1", 220 pounds. And Azareye'h Davis had a very interesting rookie year last year. And when you look at what he was able to do last season and what you hope this Jets offense can do this year with a run-first offense under Tanner Enstrand, the new offensive coordinator, hopefully forming a new identity for this New York Jets team, what Azareye'h Davis was able to do in his rookie season really put some intrigue into you if you're a New York Jets fan for what he could potentially do in year number 2 for this team in this running back room that already includes, of course, Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, who is also going into his second year, and Eyes, a second-year breakout. But really one of the more under-the-radar players is Azareye'h Davis, who isn't being talked about as much just because of the way his role was last year on this Jets team as the number 3 running back on a team that, to begin with, didn't run the ball enough and didn't run the ball with much success when they did. But the underlying numbers were actually pretty impressive last year, and I think provide some hope and some optimism into what he can do this year for this Jets team, even if he is the third running back on this team. I still think you look at Davis as an intriguing piece in this offense, a guy that Aaron Glenn has talked about a lot, a guy that he likes, and somebody to keep an eye on as a potential breakout. Not saying he's going to go out and have this elite dominant season, but somebody to keep an eye on as a player who, even as a running back 3, let's say, and Braylon Allen, Breece is your 1-2 punch, which seems to be the direction it's heading in. No surprise there. You still look at Davis playing an important role for this team on an offense that, of course, should be focused and heavy amount of running. Now, when you look at his numbers last year, like I said, it was kind of an interesting rookie season for Azareye'h Davis because this was a guy who had a very, very small amount of opportunities. But when you talk about taking advantage and making the most of your opportunities, that's exactly what Azareye'h Davis was able to do last year. He appeared in all 17 games, but he only played 110 snaps, which is 10.3% of the offensive snaps. That's around just 6.5 snaps per game. That is a very, very small number of snaps. He only had 30 carries for 174 yards, but he averaged 5.8 yards per carry and was able to find the end zone once. Now, his receiving numbers for the year, 9 receptions on 12 targets, 75 yards, 8.3 yards per reception, and a touchdown. And when you combine receiving and rushing, you had 39 total touches, 249 yards, 6.4 yards per attempt, and 2 touchdowns. But I think what's most impressive about Davis is not just those simple box score numbers, but some of the other stuff, right? Only playing 110 snaps, which was just 10.3% and 6.5 snaps per game. In his 30 carries, he averaged 5.8 yards per carry. That's just a tick below 6 yards per carry, which is very good. And in fact, that was 5th among 91 running backs in the NFL with at least 30 carries. On top of that, some of Davis's other numbers actually put him atop all 3 main New York Jets running backs last year when you compare him to Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. He had 3.6 yards after contact per carry last year. Breece Hall and Braylon Allen both had 2.1. So he actually led the Jets in that category. His 5.8 yards per carry was also first on the team. Breece had 4.2. Braylon Allen at 3.6. And this is not to diminish Breece and Braylon Allen. I've already done a Braylon Allen preview. I'm very high on him and what he can do this year. But it's more so to bring up what Azareye'h Davis was able to do last year in a very limited number of opportunities. On top of that, he had a 26.7% explosive run rate, which is the percentage of carries that went for 10 or more yards. Breece was at 12.4%, and Braylon Allen was at 5.4%. Davis, well above the rest of the pack there. And again, you talk about making the most of his opportunities. Davis was a guy last year, just 30 carries, but 8 of those went for 10 or more yards, including one of those 8 going for 20-plus yards. So again, you talk about, and that's where you get that 26.7%. You talk about a limited number of carries, but going out there and making the most. Azareye'h Davis was a guy who had a significant number of chunk plays, a significant number of really big runs, long runs, big chunk yard runs, even though he only had 30 carries and played 110 snaps. Some other advanced metrics that I want to give you as well with Azareye'h Davis. He had 4 yards gained 60% of the time on his runs. The NFL average was 46.2%. Braylon Allen's average was 46.7%, and Breece was 43.5%. So another one of those categories where Azareye'h Davis led the way there. He also had 19 out of his 30 carries were considered successful carries. And what is considered a successful carry is a run that gains at least 40% of the required yardage on first down, 60% on second down, and 100% on third or fourth down. So his 63.3% rushing success rate, which was 19 of his 30 carries deemed successful, were second among 91 running backs last year with at least 30 carries. So 5th with the 5.8 yards per carry, led the team yards after contact, yards per carry, explosive run rate, 4 yards gained, 60% of his runs, and the successful rushing success rate, second among 91 running backs with 30 carries last year. So Davis's year, to kind of really sum things up, for such a limited role, and really a role that he didn't see until later on in the season, he did a lot of things that excite you if you're a New York Jet fan. And you think of the potential of this Jets running back room with a mindset in this offense, with an identity in this offense that is going to be centered around running the football with Brees, Braylon Davis, and throw Justin Fields in that mix as well. And that's where you can get excited. Now, in terms of Davis's role, you're looking at probably a running back 3, but I could easily see Davis this season, just the way the Jets could potentially distribute things and the amount of times that this team could potentially run the football. And if they're having success at times, if Davis has the hot hand, he's going to get opportunities. He's going to get chances. He's going to have a lot more opportunities than he definitely had last year. And if you look at what he was able to do last year, of course, in those limited number of opportunities, you stretch that across more opportunities, and he has a similar success rate. That's where you can really be intrigued about what he can do in this running back room, plus what Braylon Allen can bring in year 2 and what Breece Hall can bring in year 2. And I just think future-wise, you look at this Jets running back room, right? Azareye'h Davis, Braylon Allen are 2 guys to continue to keep your eye on beyond just this year, right? With the unknown future around Breece Hall in a make-or-break season, contract up at the end of this year. Sure, you could go down the whole franchise tag route. I think there's a really good chance, though, this is it with Breece Hall in a Jets uniform. And down the line, again, this isn't so much this year, but down the line, that opens up more of a door for Braylon Allen and Azareye'h Davis. But in this year alone, you look at him as a very intriguing running back 3 who potentially at times could get running back 2-like opportunities if he's got the hot hand. Alongside Braylon Allen and Breece Hall, of course. So that's Azareye'h Davis for your offensive player preview in today's episode. Now, moving on to the defensive side of the football, we're going to take a look here at Azareye'h Thomas, also known, of course, as AZ Thomas, this year's 3rd round, 73rd overall draft pick for the New York Jets. 21 years old, 6'1", 197 pounds, 6'1 and a half rather, 197 pounds. Azareye'h Thomas is a really intriguing player preview to do, and a really intriguing prospect when the New York Jets selected him in the later part of day 2 of the 2025 NFL draft. AZ Thomas entered the draft as one of the top, not just cornerback prospects, but a top 50, top 40 prospect in some eyes in college football, entering the draft, and was also among the cornerback prospects rather, was among the top. And there was a lot of scouts, a lot of analysts that viewed AZ Thomas as a potential 1st-round pick. Now, most had him in the early parts of round 2, in the early parts of day number 3. But not many saw him dropping all the way to 73. This was a guy that had some 1st-round talk around him, primarily early day 2, but nothing in day number 3. And when ultimately what's interesting about AZ Thomas is the combine was a pure example of somebody's draft stock being tanked a bit, being dropped a bit. Azareye'h Thomas's 40-yard dash is ultimately what led to him possibly being a 1st-round, late day 1, early day 2 pick, to a guy that the New York Jets were able to get 20 to 30 picks later at number 73, late in day 2, completely out of the 2nd round in round number 3. This is a guy that ran a 4.58 40-yard dash. And while his 6'1 and a half height is in the 84th percentile and his 32 and 3/8 inch arms are in the 80th percentile, the 4.58 40-yard dash ranked in the 17th percentile. And that 40-yard dash kind of skewed and tanked the draft stock a little bit, but clearly from a Jets perspective, still very high on him. An Aaron Glenn guy, a guy that fits into exactly what Aaron Glenn and this defense are looking for in a cornerback, and a draft pick that, as time continues to go on, you continue to feel really strong about it, especially from what he's able to do in the future for this New York Jets team and the potential and how he projects in this offense, in this scheme, because a lot of what the New York Jets are going to do from a man coverage standpoint, A.Z. Thomas does that really well. And I'll get into some of his man coverage stats and how that benefits and how that plays into this Jets defense. But you just look at some of the simple numbers here. Last year in 2024, despite everything that, of course, went on at Florida State, I do think that's something that's important when you look at these prospects. Right, this is a guy that at Florida State went from a top winning program his first 2 years to a team that completely fell off a cliff last year. And despite all that, still put together a very productive season, very productive junior year. 12 games played, 53 tackles, a pick, 4 passes defended, 2 tackles for loss, no touchdowns allowed on 357 coverage snaps. That in itself is impressive. On top of that, his career numbers, again, basic stuff here, but 37 games in his career at Florida State, 96 tackles, 2 picks, 15 passes defended, including 10 of those in 2023. And he had a 17% pass breakup rate because he, of course, had the 15. He was targeted 90 times in his 37 games, and he finished his collegiate career as well with 9 tackles for loss. I think something that's so intriguing about A.Z. Thomas from his college stat standpoint, as I break into some of the more advanced numbers here, is just the way he was able to develop and the way he was able to come in right away as a freshman in 2022 and play a nice developmental role, a nice rotational role for that FSU secondary. And in 2023 and more so in 2024, take over that starter role and really see consistent improvement over the years. And that projects well at the NFL level as a rookie and moving forward in this defense where you hope to see continued growth out of any of your young players. But you look at his 2022 numbers here. I'll give you snap count, yards per target, passer rating, and just show you as the snaps went up, the production and the success also went up. In his first season, his freshman year, he had played 327 snaps, 11.1 yards per target, 119.3 passer rating allowed. Fast forward a year later, 14 games played in 2023, his sophomore season, 493 snaps played, 7.2 yards per target, 89.2 passer rating. And then you fast forward to his junior year, 12 games played 2024, 755 snaps, 4.3 yards per target, and a 50.2 passer rating. This past year, in all 3 of those categories, his best year. The most snaps he's played, the lowest yards per target, and the lowest passer rating. And those numbers consistently dropped. 11.1, 7.2, 4.3 in the yards per target. And then 119.3, 89.2, 50.2 from a passer rating perspective. And of course, the snaps go from 300s to 400s all the way up to 755. And I think that's important when you evaluate him, the consistent growth that he showed. Now, something that's so intriguing about A.Z. Thomas, and look, obviously the athleticism, the 40-yard dash is something that people are going to knock him for. But as Glenn mentioned, I remember post-draft press conference, what he's able to do from a coverage standpoint and his long arms and his height and just his man coverage skills is able to make up for the lack of speed. Right? This is a guy that is an excellent press coverage corner. Very physical. High football IQ as well. And I'll read you some numbers here in a second that I think show you from a football IQ standpoint where he's had success. Again, the long arms. He does have quick feet, and his change of direction is good. Just the speed, the 40-yard dash time wasn't there. But a lot of other things in his game you really like. And most importantly, from a schematic perspective, you have optimism in what he can do, not just his rookie year, but also future years as well. Last year, you look at the man coverage numbers. The Lions last year under Aaron Glenn ran man coverage 47.7% of the time, which was first in the NFL. 109 man coverage snaps for Azareye'h Thomas last season. He was targeted 14 times, allowed 7 catches. That's a 50% completion percentage for 60 yards, no touchdowns, a pick. That's a 31.8 passer rating allowed, which was 12th among FBS corners. The only others to get drafted that were inside the top 12, Jahdae Barron was first, and then Travis Hunter was 7th. Those two, both first-round picks. Azareye'h Thomas sitting there at 12th. You get him in the 3rd round. Good company to be in. And I know Steve Wilks, right? That's been something that's been talked about a lot with Jet fans. Steve Wilks runs more zone. Jets run more man. I still expect this to be a Jets team that runs a lot more man this year. You've already started to see some of that. I don't talk too much about training camp in these episodes, but you've seen some of that already in training camp. But I do still expect this team to run a lot more man, especially a lot more man than they ran last year, where they went from one of the lowest man coverage teams in the NFL. This year, you're bringing in Glenn, who runs a ton more man. And I think Wilks will adjust that as well and run more man as well. And the pieces they've brought in fit that man scheme fit. Azareye'h Thomas is right there with that. From a scheme fit perspective, that physical press corner. Glenn likes those guys. Thomas is that. Some other numbers I want to get into here before we close things out and wrap things up. 6 penalties on 1,575 career snaps for Azareye'h Thomas. 3 penalties on 755 snaps last year. So throughout his career was able to keep the penalties at a pretty low minimum. He also allowed just 21 yards as his largest gain in 2024. He was one of 4 FBS cornerbacks who played 300-plus coverage snaps and didn't allow a reception for more than 21 yards last year. So this is a guy that you talk about kind of like a high-floor corner. He's that type of guy. You know, there's kind of 2 types of corners. You have your more of your lockdown and then more of your, I guess, high interceptions, but boom or bust type of corners where they're going to get burnt, but they're going to pick up a lot of picks. They're going to get targeted a lot. They're going to get beat, but they're going to have their fair share of, plays as well. Azareye'h Thomas is more that lockdown. 21 yards was only the largest gain. Not going to get beat a ton. Not going to get lost in coverage. And I think that shows just the IQ standpoint of his game. He's a smart corner. And again, man is very successful. And he's been in a man system, and he enters a man system here. Now, only cornerback in college football to allow 0 touchdowns, 0 receptions, and 25 or 25-plus yards while playing 300-plus coverage snaps was Azareye'h Thomas. Very impressive. The only cornerback in college football last year to do that. So something he was at the top there. Now, 2 things Azareye'h Thomas you do look at. He did have a 13.8% missed tackle rate, which was 52nd percentile among FBS cornerbacks with 400 snaps total, not just including coverage snaps. So that is something you would like to see slight improvement at. And Glenn has talked about a lot, tackling being so important. And also the 2 interceptions on 90 targets. That number, if that could jump up a bit in the NFL, something else that you look at as something for him to grow at and add to his toolbox. But all in all, you look at Azareye'h Thomas in his rookie year, and he's joining a cornerback room that's got a lot of other pieces. And you look at Brandon Stephens, of course, one of the more controversial signings. Is there a way Azareye'h Thomas at some point this season plays over Stephens if there's struggles there? Certainly possible. But Azareye'h Thomas is going to be a very intriguing rookie rotational piece in this cornerback room this season, and even long-term view is also very promising from the perspective of, in this scheme, the man coverage ability, just the press coverage, the physical, the long arms, the length, all of those traits you really, really like in a corner, and he brings that. And I always say, how can you not like a guy as he enters his rookie year here, what he can do this year, that was supposed to be, in some eyes, a late day one, early day two pick that you got 73rd overall? That's got to give you some confidence as well. So excited to see what AZ Thomas can do this year. AZ Thomas, Sauce, those two alongside each other give you a lot of optimism. And anybody else, AZ Thomas fits into a very strong cornerback room here as well. So that'll do it. Another episode in the books. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. What are your expectations for second-year running back Azareye'h Davis this season, and your expectations for rookie cornerback AZ Thomas? Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. Appreciate your support as always, and until next time, JETS, 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 Jets.